morning. Hello, everyone listening live. Got my friends, the birds here. I'm going to say hi to everybody because I got here a little late today. Welcome, community. Hey, Robert, Maggie, David, Holly, Chris, Kristen, Jay David, Sean, Kyle, Amy, Brother Ed, Pat, Candyman, Wanda, Kenzie, Rebecca, and Susie. Kenzie, thank you for the super chat. Thank you. Nice. Thank you very much, my fellow Canadian across the border. Oh, what did I just do to my screen? Holy Toledo. There we go. I just did something to my screen. Anyway, that's live show for you. But thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Caroline, Jen, Lee, and Marnie. Thanks, everybody here. Thank you all for being here today. I'll turn my friends down here. Today, we're a community, and we've been developing as a community for quite some time. So I want to thank everybody for being here live, and if you're watching by recording, the same thing. Today, the intersection of near-death experience, Christianity, and yoga, finding oneness. I do find that oneness is the one thing I love to talk about. Peace, love, and namaste from the rural coast of Maine, where the frogs are creaking outside talking. Welcome, and thanks for being here live and listening to this recording. Today, we'll discover alignments between near-death experience, the Gospels of John 3:31 to 36, and the Gospel of Thomas 61, and the Yoga Sutras. So Gospel of John, Gospel of Thomas, Yoga Sutras. Some of you might not know the Yoga Sutras, authored by Panagore, whose books flourished in India between the 2nd century BCE and the 5th century CE. The Yoga Sutras categorize yogic thought and practice, arranged in basically, well, 4 for sure, with these kind of titles: psychic power, the practice of yoga, Kriya and Ashtanga, samadhi, the direct and reliable perception of the absolute, and liberation or self-realization. The Yoga Sutras are written, they are the written foundation, as far as I know, of all of yoga. And you can join us on Zoom on Tuesdays for Kriya Yoga and the Yoga Sutras for our class. Find the link at peterpanagore.love. So let's continue with the Gospels, John and Thomas. We'll come back to Patanjali. You will also be unfamiliar, you church-going folk, with the translations you're about to hear from John, and you've probably not heard Thomas, as I explore the mystical meaning through the lens of near-death experience and a lifetime of scholarship. John 3:31 to 36. Few people accept the testimony of the one who comes from heaven above and lives above all. The one who comes from above, who saw, heard, and experienced, who sees, hears, and listens, who testifies to and bears witness to heaven above. Those who resonate with the testimony are unassailable with the truth. The one whom Source sends to talk, Source gives spirit without measure. The divine parent loves the child and gives all things to the child. To trust this resonance is to find and have eternal life. Those who are materialists speak only of the physical world. Jesus talks about his direct mystical experience. He always does. He's a mystical person. This is the essence of what he is saying about himself, and is also what I feel and experience as a near-death experiencer, and I think many other near-death experiencers might align with that with me. Do you see how closely in alignment these sentiments are with many near-death experiences that you've heard? And I probably haven't. So please tell me in the comments if you've heard ND ears either talk about this or talk like this as Jesus did. Here's my take on his words about life, about, well, my life. 23 years ago, when I came out of my near-death experience closet, few people accepted my testimony as one who comes from heaven above and lives in a frequency of heaven above all matter, all things material. Those who resonate with the testimony, capital T, that lives as a vibration inside us, inside me, are unassailable because of the truth and light that lives in me, lives in us. I am unassailable because of this vibration, this resonance. I live this way, and I've cultivated it. Those whom Source sends to talk, Source gives spirit without measure. There is an endless spirit flow without measure, continually and copiously living through me, living through all things that are. It's merely a matter of surrender or stepping aside. And if you've felt this sort of thing, even in a blip of a moment, that part of you is unassailable. The marvelous parent loves this child, you too, and gives all the needed things to the child for the mission, the purpose, or the calling, all things I've ever needed to do the job I was called to do before I was born, I am given. And this is evidence of them, this small little niche right over here in the corner of YouTube. And all the way through the ministries I've had, TV, radio, church, interpersonal, I always have enough. And if I don't have enough, I know how to cultivate a space to provide myself with enough of the resonance so that I don't use my own energy. That's how I started out. Nowadays, it's just a flow, but I definitely had to cultivate the space in order for the resonance to be inside of me so I wouldn't consume my own personal energy. And to trust this resonance with this unassailable aspect is to find and have eternal life, not just over there, but here, now. I trust and I know I have eternal life because I was above. I had it over there. I have it here, which has released me from the fear of death for 40 years. Those materialists speak only of the physical. They don't see with their inner eye. We can. All of us can. Have you experienced moments when you felt a connection to something greater? How did that impact your view of life? Did it change your frequency? Did you have a course redirection in your life? And did people reject your testimony? I mean, I kept it a secret forever because I didn't want to be rejected. Because lots of us are rejected. I was watching this thing on a stream on Facebook and the vicious nature of the rejection. Not in my stream. I mean, in my stream, but not in my wall. Not me, but other people. John 3:31 36. Oh, thank you, Clifford. Thank you, Chris Clifford. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you. That's super helpful. So back to John 3, 31 to 36. It resonated deeply with my near-death experience. Reading it, it resonated with my near-death experience, even without the language changes that I made for it in it for you, so that you could understand what I saw in it, what I see in it. John 3, 31, 36 to 36 resonated deeply with my near-death experience, where I felt the profound truth of his words firsthand. I was like him. He was like me. I am not alone. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only child. There are millions, tens of millions of fiber optically connected diodes here on Earth wired to heaven because of NDE and many other kinds of mystical experiences, those little tiny moments. But I felt the profound truth of the words of Jesus' words firsthand, but I still felt alone in the world. And heck, my testimony, God loved my parents. My testimony was rejected by my parents. Mom finally understood to an extent. Dad, not never. Which is okay, because in the end, he found out for himself. He came back and told me so. After my first near-death experience, I knew I had work to do. So I found that my attachment to my self-identity blocked my way. Who I thought I was as a human being was in my way, because when I was dead, I didn't have a human being to block my way. I could see that the only one standing between me and my beloved, unrequited love, my beloved was me. Not completely unrequited. But I was in my own way. I still am in my own way. I wanted oneness with a capital O, the oneness I experienced in heaven, which Jesus, Yeshua, talked about. I had to learn to step aside. Now, in the Bible, Jesus is huge on miracles, teaching wisdom and living his truth, but he's quite poor on how to achieve what I had lost when I came back to life 2.0. So I found reading 2 Eastern books on mysticism helped me understand what I needed to do. And I could see the alignment between Thomas, John, and Panagore. In 1980, I followed Pantagore's advice in the Yoga Sutras, where he advised us to discard distractions and focus on a singularity to achieve samadhi, which you recall is the direct and reliable perception of the absolute and liberation. This means finding a practice that helps us quiet our minds and connect us deeply with our inner selves. Samadhi is a state of profound and utterly absorptive contemplation of the absolute that is in its purest form, which I don't experience all the time. I'll tell you that right now. Is undisturbed by desire, anger, or any other ego-generated thought or emotion. In other words, oneness. And although I experience those emotions still, because I'm a human being, in the moment of Kundalini awakening, all those decades ago, after my NDE, I was in that state where there was no thought or emotion or self. I was in surrender to 100%. And that impacted my choices that I made. And I'm telling you this because I want you to consider that your human being self is a temporary place. And that, as Jesus said, the true treasure is in heaven and here, but in heaven. And I also followed Paramahansa Yogananda's advice to learn and practice Kriya Yoga secretly, even when surrounded by Christians who would not have approved. Could have lost my job. Imagine my surprise. This was later, could have lost the job, but I did the same thing in divinity school. I was practicing this in div school and nobody knew. Imagine my surprise when in divinity school, I discovered the Gospel of Thomas 61:5, where we find something similar but to Patanjali's yoga. Thomas 61. Whenever someone regularly clears their inner self, separating the unnecessary from the essential, they are clearing the lower self, will open wider. The lower self they're clearing will open wider and become a single self filled with light. But if someone constantly divides their attention, chasing one outer desire after another, they will be full of darkness. Thomas 61:5. Clear the inner self of everything unnecessary. Keep only what is essential, and the one will open and become single in light. And this sounds a lot like make your eye single and your body will be filled with light in Matthew 6. But Jesus, how? How do I regain what I lost when I came back to this life? That's my question for myself 40 years ago. How do I do this? Well, the Yoga Sutras, they tell us how. Single-mindedness and surrender. Single-minded spiritual practices that use chants, breath work, and body work. I know because the results of my 40 years of practice and the psychic phenomena around me are examples. I'm not trying to be psychic. Things just happen around me. Ask anyone who knows me. I wanted more of what I had in heaven. So I studied and learned that book knowledge and YouTube knowledge matter a lot less. They're important, but they matter a lot less than the actual spiritual practices of single-mindedness that clear away my distracting self. Learning to become single-minded while filling with light, living resonance, and living in a bubble of heaven now, so that I can know my eternal nature here. So what helps? What's the key? It is, as Yeshua, Yogananda, and Patanjali agree, single-mindedness. Single-minded meditation practice and Kriya Yoga, which Paramahansa Yogananda called the fastest route to self-realization, which I didn't know when I started, but I'll tell you, it works. Help immensely, but they aren't the only paths. Energy growth techniques combined with self non-attachment practices come in other forms. Energy growth techniques combined with self non-attachment practices, just so you heard me, come in other forms. So what forms can you think of? I can think of some. Tell me which ones you think of. Earlier this week, I spoke to a busy ICU nurse who could not find the time to meditate. Young family, full-time work, ICU, and was worried about her spiritual growth. Yet in every moment of her working day, she set aside herself concerns to serve her patients better. She was practicing the lived path of surrender. But remember this, don't be a doormat. The spiritual journey involves keeping boundaries strong while serving others. Because it's not humiliation, it's humility. And humility comes with boundaries. Now, in what other jobs or ways can a person practice non-attachment? Single-minded practice clears our blockages and allows us to see ourselves and others as they are, glowing in light. It gives strength and a refuge of balance and steadiness as we face the fluctuations of life. In summary, aligning ourselves with the truths found in John, Thomas, and the Yoga Sutras can lead us to a deeper, more fulfilling, and connected spiritual life. Remember, the journey to spiritual enlightenment, it's personal and unique. Explore different practices. Find what resonates for you and embrace the light within for the oneness itself, which is who and what you are. So thanks for joining me live or by recording this morning. I can be here. I am here because of your ongoing generous support. There are people here been supporting me for decades, some for years, some new. You enable this, and I thank you so much for that help that you give. Thank you, my friends. You can join us at Mystic Tea Salon at the top of the hour, which is in about 9 minutes, to continue our discussion on the subject we talked about today and anything else that comes up. This is crowdsourced, authentic, and humble wisdom from around the world. I'm available for conversation or spiritual counseling from Sunday to Wednesday. You can join us on Mondays and Wednesdays for our morning meditations at 8 a.m. right here on YouTube. Tuesdays, we do the live Kriya class on Zoom. And you can find links for all of this in the description and at peterpanagore.love. Again, thank you for your support. Namaste, my friends. Peace. All right, I'm going to take a couple minutes here and take a look at the chat over here. Thank you very much, Sylvester and Natasha, for the super chats, and for Marnie and your weak little Canadian dollar that you say. Thank you all for the super chat. It's super helpful. There's also PayPal and Venmo and a whole bunch of stuff. That's all on my website. Thank you so much. Let's see, what do we have here? Any comments? Translations, common knowledge of that day and what was known then. All these things can change meanings. Translations of that time can change what we understand today. Yeah, because language is fluid. What Robert's saying is language is fluid unless you know the context of the time and the context of not just the time but the location and the person. Translations are, the meanings of the translations become obscured by the language itself. I hope that's clear. Thanks, Robert. Resonance. Cannot believe anything if it does not resonate with what I know is true, says Kristen. Response taken to the power of infinity. Keep a mind of who is really in control. Truth is eternal. Thank you, Robert. Trusting the unassailable. Thank you. I realize that in my daily life, moment to moment work these days. Trusting the resonance is not only real, but the most real, says Ellen. It is the most real. It's the most real. You've heard near-death experiencers say it's reality over there is capital R, and here it's lowercase. It's not, and that's where real is. But it's the most real there is for us to have this truth living in us now. It's the end. I'm going to read what you said again. Trusting the unassailable in your daily life, moment to moment, is your work these days. That is the surrender practice and in a daily way of living. That's not single-minded meditation, formal sitting practice, but it's probably it's more integrative and more relational and just as impactful. The the practice of the practice in relationship to people, trusting the resonance of the real is really where it's at, because it's a living presence. We're just merely, with all the techniques, we're just merely trying to tap into this living presence by moving things out of the way, removing the stones from the river. That's all we're doing with all the practices we practice. Everybody, qigong or tai chi or whatever else you're practicing out there, all are removing the stones when they're after single-mindedness. I've got about 2 minutes here, and then I've got to skedaddle because I've got to take a break here. Quick, experienced extreme peace during a time I had in my backyard. I just finished with letting go. Then there was a moment where I just connected with Source, and it was just peace, a warm hug. Yeah, like that. Ascending Leo. As above, so below, says Sue. That's what that means. As above, so below. That's what it means. Thank you, Sue. I'm still trying to put my SDE into words. When I talk, they don't believe it. I would probably not if I did not experience it either. NDE stories support me and keep you sane. Yeah, Hildy, that's why we're talking out. That's why I'm talking out, is so that we can form a community of people who've experienced this. We can have strength together. That's what Mystic Tea is for. That's what this whole thing is for, other than Kriya Yoga, which is also what it's for, because it connects this community interiorly. But yeah, thank you, Hildy. And I know that they have, it's not their fault. They don't see it because they can't see it. It's not their fault. But that doesn't mean that they, that the rejections don't still hurt. All right, I gotta go. I wish I could stay, but I gotta go. Thank you, Amy, for the super chat. Thank you all for all of this. Peace and love to everybody.